few weeks ago, I put out a video where I sat down and interviewed the bass player that I replaced in Burden Affinity. And while we mostly talked about bad decisions and the way that we approach that song a little bit differently, the reality is we talked about quite a bit more. Everything from learning bass to tuning decisions and even a little bit about malls. Some might say we were blathering. Well, they'd be right. But there's still a lot of really good discussion points in there, mostly from Kyle. So, without wasting all of that, I figured I'd put this together. So without any further ado, I present to you the Blathering Sessions.
I've been doing this for a long time in Jacksonville, and I let other projects kind of sideline stuff that I wanted to do as well. So it was easier to start allocating time for myself and to make sure that I was home as much as I needed to be by kind of letting BA fall to the wayside from my perspective.
If you watch my channel, which by the way, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe. There's a little link down there. Click it, hit the bell, all that fun stuff. If you do watch these videos fairly often, you know that I'm in two bands, not only Burden Affinity, but another band, Coffin. The things Kyle was mentioning about not having enough time for was his solo project. What's the name of that band?
Coffin.
Ah, yes. That's right. Not only did I replace Kyle in Burden Affinity,
I hired him on. As much as I enjoy doing Burden Affinity, and I'm very proud of the EP that we did together, as far as a philosophy goes, I have a much different philosophy. And everyone going over to Coffin was willing to adapt to that philosophy.
make sure you're checking out Coffin. Links in the description. Make sure you like and subscribe, like all the fun stuff, right? Like go check out the music. It's on all the streaming. It's everywhere, right? Just everywhere.
Everywhere.
Everywhere you can find music.
Where music exists, Coffin is there.
Which is not record stores, because I don't think those exist anymore, right? Knowing of you for many years before having met you, it was always assumed that you were in any band where we didn't know who the bass player was, and 9 times out of 10 we were right. Because I think at one point you were in like, what, 6 bands?
I think the most you could ever attribute to me at any given time was 5, and I think that's real generous overlap with things of like, I'm still in that band. I mean, we haven't played together in 8 months, but you know, if a show comes up, we'll take it. At a certain point, I hit an age where I realized I wasn't going to be on a private jet making millions of dollars playing music, but I still wanted to play music. I still really enjoyed it. So it got to a point where I wouldn't say no to any opportunity, which later on manifested in I'm technically in a lot of bands that may not do anything for 2 years or something like that, and all of a sudden we're recording a record. I remember very early on, before I knew anything about writing music or anything like that, I had gone and spoken to somebody who had this little recording studio, and they basically said if the kick drum is doing something, the bass should be doing something. Basically, if there's a hit on the kick, there should be a hit on the bass, almost to the point where the bass guitar should never do anything that the kick isn't doing. Start learning what bands have actually done, you find out very quickly that that's not true. The relationship between this and the drums are still very important, and trying to not be a guitar player playing bass, I really tried to focus on the relationship with the drums more than anything.
Because in reality, you actually consider yourself a guitar player first, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's what I've actually done the most of in terms of years. In terms of number of bands I've played in, I am a guitar player. I'm not, Yngwie or anything like that, but I'm a guitar player, and almost everything that I've done in terms of bass has been, oh, you guys need a bass player. Well, I've got the equipment and I like hanging out with you guys. Let's do it. I think an important thing for any musician, but especially bass players, to know is that you can do something interesting without doing a lot. It's always about what you're adding. It's not necessarily about how impressive it looks. Play for the piece. Having a lot of space and then going back and hitting the one in unison shows way more cohesion as a band than doing necessarily something super complicated altogether. When there's a lot happening, There's almost a little bit of sloppiness that can be ignored, especially by the casual listener. Yep. But when you've heard a note ring out for 4 very long beats, only to turn around and have to come in on that one again, if someone's just the teensiest bit late, it is glaringly obvious. Yep. How tight you are with the band matters way more than what you're doing. You are not an island. If I'm in a different tuning, I can't just mirror them. I have to lock in with the kick drum, find times where I am, even if I'm matching their notes in spirit, I can't sit there and constantly strum out exactly what they're doing because I'm doing a lot more fret work. It was simultaneously advantageous and a hindrance, but a hindrance by design. Yep. If I hindered myself by design, I couldn't just match the guitar line. I had to behave like a bass player, which was not my natural inclination, so I wanted to try and behave like a real bass player. Being relatively in one position, I've got pretty big hands, as I think you do too. Mm-hmm. I can pretty much handle everything from 1st to 5th fret like that. And if I ever had to do anything with backup vocals or anything like that, I never had to worry about looking down at the neck to see where I was. I was always already where I needed to be. There's a real charm to things being different live than they are recorded. I think that just removes some of the sterility. There's a lot of stuff that happens in performed music or recorded music that just makes me wish for a time that has already passed, and a live version being different kind of gives me that warmth of that old familiar day that seems to have passed. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that because technology is so good now, that when I see someone who duplicates something exactly how it is on the record, my mind is, oh, they flew that in.
Sometimes they do.
Yeah. Oh, that laptop's working double time tonight. There's a bass part, I want to say in New Year, where you're just tearing it up. It sounds so good. It's during the second verse. I really love that. You're tearing it up. It's not distracting, but it's interesting.
I appreciate that, and it's funny about that part is I almost pulled that back. Like I was actually really worried that it was too much when I wrote it, and when we were still in the demo phase, I actually went over to David's house because David is the one that does all of our demos, and I was gonna recut that to simplify it back down, and he wouldn't let me. Like he heard it, he was like, no, and I'm like, really? Because it feels like I'm doing too much as the bass for this section.
No, well, because the thing was that there was space to fill, and you did it in a way that's not distracting. And so it doesn't sound like it's there for the sake of being there. It sounds like it's there to differentiate the second verse from the first verse. Yep. I'm a huge fan of things that happen one time in a song. Yep. I think that shows a dedication to the piece. I feel like that shows a thoroughness and attention to detail that really is ignored in the copy and paste digital recording world. That to hear something where you go, oh, so he had to recut that verse because he couldn't just fly it because he had to do that part right. Yeah. That stuff really makes me excited when I listen to something. It gives me a visceral reaction of like, oh, that's so cool.
And now that my ego's been stroked appropriately, for Kyle, I would ask that you watch out with the drywall around here, but how appropriate.
I think the last record stores were at malls. I think those were dying anyway.
Oh, that's right. Malls.